The Christian rejection of the Transcendental Argument for God. Copied from CARM.org, Transcendental Argument for God, under fair use terms with critical remarks in italics. Thoughts reflect the mind. A person's thoughts are the product of that person's mind. A mind that is irrational will produce irrational thoughts. A mind that is rational will produce rational thoughts. It seems fair to say that an absolutely perfect mind would produce perfect thoughts. Continued. Since the logical absolutes are transcendent absolute and are perfectly consistent and are independent of the universe, then it seems proper to say that they reflect a transcendent absolute perfect and independent mind. We call this transcendent absolute perfect and independent mind God, since a physical brain is not transcendent by nature because it is limited to physical space, and God by definition transcendent in nature. We begin our analysis by describing the nature of thoughts, concepts, and ideas. We will continue the analysis of how we come to understand another's, God, or anybody else's thoughts. The analysis will continue to the next step by showing that Matt Slick doesn't know with any degree of certainty another person's thoughts, God, or anyone else's. And we will end the analysis by showing that Matt Slick's assertions above are not only not known, but not knowable with any reliability. We will then provide an epilogue to the analysis which will expose historic sources of the above assertions and why they should be rejected by Christians because they violate essential Christian doctrine. From CARM again, a person's thoughts are the products of a person's mind. Fair enough. For the purposes of this analysis, we will let this stand as stated. A mind that is irrational will produce irrational thoughts. A mind that is rational will produce rational thoughts. We will deal with these two assertions together in the following analysis. The process that produces thoughts, rational, irrational, or non-rational, is not known. In fact, unless we are able to peer into another's mind prior to the expressions of thoughts, the process that produces thoughts is unknowable. The only way one knows anything of another's thoughts is the manner in which the one that produced the thoughts has chosen to express them. To repeat from CARM, it seems fair to say that an absolutely perfect mind would produce perfect thoughts. Since logical absolutes are transcendent, absolute, and perfectly consistent, and are independent of the universe, then it seems proper to say that they reflect a transcendent, absolute, perfect, and independent mind. We call this transcendent, absolute, perfect, and independent mind God, since a physical brain is not transcendent by nature because it is limited to physical space, and God is, by definition, transcendent in nature. The continuation of our analysis will treat all of these assertions together. When one has produced a thought, the process of producing that thought is non-transferable to another. We can see this in the human creative activities such as composing, like music and poetry. The actual process of composing is internal and exclusive to the one doing the composing. The written notes, musical tones, or words are the result of the process, not the process itself. In theological terms, we can say that all we know of God's thoughts is the manner in which God has chosen to reveal his thoughts, the scriptures, the kind acts of believers, the person of Christ, etc. We know nothing with any degree of certainty of the thoughts themselves. We know nothing with any degree of certainty the process that God has gone through prior to revealing his thoughts. All we know of God's thoughts is the results of that process, whatever it may be, just as all we know of human composing process is the result. We say again, all we know of God's thoughts, and all we know of the process that produced God's thoughts, is the manner in which God has chosen to reveal them. The above assertions by Matt Slick and many other presuppositional apologists are not unique. They have been expressed in philosophic circles for many centuries. The epitome of these expressions was found in the 19th century Hegelian assertion, ultimate reality is absolute mind, or Geist. What Matt Slick and the rest of the presuppositional apologists seem to miss is that assertions like, since logical absolutes are transcendent, absolute, and perfectly consistent, and are independent of the universe, then it seems proper to say they reflect a transcendent, absolute, and perfect and independent mind, unquote, does not express Christian principles nor biblical principles. In fact, their history is Greek and pagan, idealist, 19th century Hegelianism, and humanist. As we shall now show, not only should these notions be rejected for their lack of Christian or biblical support, they should also be rejected for violating a central and essential doctrine, the fall. According to the standard Christian understanding of the fall, everything in the physical cosmos fell with Adam. The result of the fall is not only an alienation or separation of mankind from God, but also an alienation of man from his fellow man, alienation of mankind from the cosmos around him, and an alienation of man from himself. A further result of the fall, sometimes clumsily referred to as the noetic effects of the fall, is the alienation of words from the objects they represent. As a simple example, when we go to a restaurant and order a meal from a menu, upon receiving the meal, we do not eat the menu. Why? Because the representation of the meal on the menu is not identical to the meal itself. We may say that one of the results of the alienation of the fall has resulted in a corruption of the relationship of the meal and the menu. They are not identical. The menu represents the meal, but it is a corrupt, because of the fall, representation of the meal. In the same sense, when God's thoughts are revealed in a fallen cosmos, the revelations are also corrupted by the fall. The words are corrupted words, the reflections are corrupted reflections. Every verbal or written expression of God's thoughts within a fallen cosmos is alienated from the thoughts they represent. This is why misunderstandings can occur. We can now conclude, Matt Slick nor anyone else cannot assert, it seems fair to say that an absolutely perfect mind would produce perfect thoughts, since the logical absolutes are transcendent, absolute, and perfectly consistent, and are independent of the universe, then it seems proper to say that they reflect a transcendent, absolute, perfect, and independent mind. Nor can Matt Slick say, we call this independent, absolute, perfect, and independent mind God, since a physical brain is not transcendent by nature because it is limited to physical space, and God is by definition transcendent in nature. Because the process from God's thoughts to the expression of his thoughts in revelations is not knowable, even as the thought processes of our fellow men into words is not knowable, all we know of God's thoughts is how they are revealed by God. We must also reject such notions as, it seems proper to say that they reflect a transcendent, absolute, perfect, and independent mind, because these assertions necessarily assume the reflection of those thoughts of God is also perfect. This expression is not Christian nor biblical. Rather, it is straightforwardly a humanist, idealist, Hegelian, and secular idea. The truth of such assertions would necessarily imply an explicit violation of the essential doctrine of the fall.